Welcome to a special pirate edition of Methods of Invention. Ari is obviously chief methodologist. This is his home base, but we're also going to start exploring some other methods of invention, starting with Amy's very own method of invention, the voice print. And I do want to jump into that because I think it's a great tool for basically giving ChatGPT the essence of the person who you need to be speaking on behalf of. But first, I did want to check in on the score to the T-ball game, which was that last night or the night before?
Yeah, it was last night. It was our first game. Cubs. It's a
Wow.
powerhouse of T-ball up here in the Catskills. Our roster is young. You know, we got a young team. They're ages 4 to 6, but there's a lot of raw talent out there. And if we could just get them to figure out after they hit the ball to go directly to first base rather than wandering to go get water from their parents or taking off to second base.
As one does.
I think we're gonna dominate this year. I feel really good about the team's chances. But you know, I've been a Mets fan my entire life, so I have a perverse view of success when it comes to rooting for a team. But we're gonna do our best. We're gonna do our best, and we're gonna have a lot of fun.
All right.
Doing it.
I have plenty more questions to ask you about T-ball, but I think probably we ought to dive in here. So just to sort of, set up, I think, the voice print concept. Amy is a communications and messaging consultant for CEOs, and I think you've obviously worked at CEOs at all levels. She's got some high flyers on her roster, but she flies under the radar. We'll sort of leave it at that. And I think in this process, as you've been talking with Ari, we've kind of outed you a bit as the voice that you often are, as a ghostwriter, a pillar builder, a collaborator. I think for leaders across the board. And Ari not only sings your praises as a key idea partner, but he launched Methods of Invention with you because he felt you had a particular way of grokking process and method and understanding. For him, optimize, automate, outsource, and replaceable founder. But where does that particular skill set come from?
I mean, I'd like to say like traumatic childhood, but I think that everybody uses traumatic childhood as a, catch-all thing for why they're good at stuff. But I think when you're always on alert, on high alert, you have a really excellent way of sensing the mood of a room or the tone of people's voices. And I think that can become ingrained and then used for a good purpose. So I think I've always had the ability to pick up on nuance when it comes to the way people communicate. And I think that that's why I'm able to do it as a, fully healed, integrated 60-year-old woman who holds no grudges against anyone.
Fair enough. So I'm going to leave that one aside for another day. We'll go into that along with the T-ball. Jumping into the voice print, you brought up this idea with me. I feel like it was about a month and a half ago. And I said, wow, that's an interesting idea. And I wrote down my definition of it. You can tell me what your definition of it is. But I look at it as like, okay, this is an authenticating tool for a generative platform that gives you character, tone, and voice and all the sort of intangibles of the speaker in question. Is that a fair definition for you?
Absolutely nailed it. That is absolutely. I mean, everybody is a creator. Everybody has a voice. But how it sort of started was Ari and I would work with clients who would say, I send my stuff out to copywriters or I send my stuff out to people to write my books and it comes back and it doesn't sound like me. So we would say, well, what do you sound like? And there was silence, right? Because it wasn't a sense that that most people thought the solution was external, that you were hiring someone to discover who you were simply by being in your presence or understanding your business, but it didn't speak to that creativity comes from inside, and you have to really examine it from a very personal standpoint. So we started to break down almost like I said to you, like English Comp 101. Like if you're reading, Catcher in the Rye, right? And what are the general themes of Catcher in the Rye? And what is the tone of Holden Caulfield? And we took all of those and broke it down into an exercise that anyone can do to sort of zoom in on how it is that they actually communicate and how it is received generally. So it's it's a two-part exercise as well, because it's not just about how you think you are in communication. It's also about how you are actually received, right? So we worked with a lot of people who thought they had a good solid 5-minute stand-up set. They
Mm-hmm.
had bits for days, and none of it landed with the audience. So that might be a good time to examine, maybe I should dial back my attempt to do stand up and deliver the message in another way, right? So it can be a little bit uncomfortable, but that's
Mm-hmm.
where growth, that's where we all grow up anyway, right? So that's what we did.
Well, I my first job out of college was reading screenplays for an LA agency, and I did about 10 of them a week, and you had to get to the point where you could just kind of like crank through them. You'd write your synopsis, your character breakdown, and your analysis of the story. And I got a really kind of good sense of all the elements of story and how important character is for story. And it's interesting because I do think we are, generative AI is a storyteller's domain. It's content, it's synthetic content that has text, images, audio, video, data, and the like. And the sequencing of content into, a story, creating a narrative is really that's the domain of folks like you and me, writers and creators and marketers. That's that part of that domain. And I'm really curious because Joe and I spent Friday talking about it. He's our AI guru, and we went through it from the perspective AI for content from the perspective of the AI consultants. But what was really kind of interesting was how much folks like you really matter to understand what you need to feed in to the system for it to actually give you good outputs, right?
and and also to be realistic about what the output is going to be. I look at it as a really good writing partner who's going to give me an awesome first draft. I just need a first draft, right? Because then if I have a good first, the theoretical doesn't help when you're talking about trying to create content. You have to have copy in front of you to work off of, right? So if I can take the specifics of a voice print, give the parameters to ChatGPT, get what I think will be a good first draft, look at it, give it instruction to fine tune whatever that might be, and then take that first draft and look back at it as a human at my parameters from the voice print, then I know where to make my little tweaks. But I'm telling you that what used to take me 4 hours, that process I just explained, that would take me 4 hours, now takes me 20 minutes. And that is remarkable. It is
Mm-hmm.
remarkable.
Yeah.
So I did one on myself. I did a voice print of myself just to do an exercise to see what ChatGPT would give me back if I gave these instructions about this person. And the first thing I asked it for was a style guide, sort of an AP style guide of, if I were to be writing for this person who has these different qualities, what should things look like? language should I use, whatever. So I put in the first part of the voice print are my personal values, the things that I'm not interested in change, of things that, people will tell when I die at my celebration of life, people, I hope, mention these things, right? That this was what I did on the planet, what was important to me on the planet, right? And then it's very interesting when you talk to business leaders, when you ask them about what those intangibles are, what those themes are, the thematic sort of overarching thing that makes their business their business. It's very difficult for a lot of them to come up with the language for the words for those themes. But for me personally, it was, social justice and compassion. This is pretty much how I've operated. My job on the planet is to ensure that I leave it a better place than I found it. That's pretty much my mission statement. That's my vision and I try to tell compelling stories, that in that vein. That is my mission. So then I go through my intent. What am I trying to do? Why am I even bothering? Why am I even, blah, blah, blah. Why am I talking? I'm talking because I want to entertain people, because I think that's a good way to get in and a good way to share a common, oh, right, we're the same. We don't look the same. We don't talk the same, but I'm laughing and she's laughing. And that's got to be like, oh, we have something in common to entertain, but using that as the first step towards persuading somebody. Right. If we take a little bit of the edge off of people before we start trying to get them to do something, it makes the getting to do something a lot easier. So it's, to entertain and persuade. And then I want to set a mood with my writing. I want people to come with me on this, non-linear journey, right? I am not a B, C, D, E writer. I have lots of eddies, they call them in trout fishing, right? Like there's lots of little places I take people. It's not a straight line. Also very important in the way that it's primarily women, but I would say men do too, in the narrative structure, that it flows in a much less linear way. And then I have a tone. What is my tone? Well, it used to be really sarcastic. It used to be, I was edgy. I thought edgy was cool. Edgy's not cool. Edgy is hurtful. And so my tone has changed a lot, but I'm never going, you can take the girl out of Manhattan, but you never take the IRT out of the girl. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So that's also fine with me. That's part of who I am. And I'm very proud of it. And, so there's always going to be that undercut, that sort of irreverent undercurrent to the things that I write. So I take all of that information and I ask ChatGPT to give me a style guide for a person like that. And the question I asked was, please write a literary style guide for a person whose personal values include compassion and social justice. Her audience is are heart-centered eccentrics who have a plan to leave the world a better place than how they found it. She tells compelling, funny stories that are subtly persuasive in an enthusiastic and inclusive way. Her sentence structure is crisp and cheerful, but can be dry and biting. And in 20 seconds, I get a 4-page style guide that breaks down my storytelling what I should do with storytelling, what I should do with language. It's remarkable. So, not happy with just that, I say to ChatGPT, now take that style guide and give me a story about a person who knows nothing about T-ball, but has volunteered to coach because no one else will. She is captivated by children, knows them well, and marvels at the complexity of teaching the greatest game ever played to little boys and girls who would rather tackle one another in the grass and watch helicopters fly overhead. And then it gives me a story. Once upon a time, in a small town nestled between rolling hills, gives me this absolutely wonderful tale, almost like a children's book, right, of this woman. But it's too saccharine. it's beyond adorable. It's almost annoying in its sort of story arc. So I say thank you because I'm very mannerly with my writing partner. I'm not a Karen when it
Yeah,
comes
no,
to
P's and Q's are
ChatGPT.
important.
Very important to be nice to the AI. I said, thank you very much. Now make it less saccharine and more irreverent. And the first sentence will give you an indication of the difference of tone now, right? Once upon a time in a backwater town that time forgot, there was a woman named Lily, and she was the epitome of compassionate chaos with a knack for stumbling into situations she knew nothing about. There, that's me. And that took 20
Second
minutes.
draft, right?
That's the first draft, right? Right.
Yeah.
I made it give me a second draft, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew when I was reading it, I was like, that's too cute. It's, when the problem that happens with a lot of people who write about children is they think it has to be adorable, and it doesn't have to be adorable. It can be irreverent. So that's the process. And I'm so, I'm, when I jumped up and down after it came out because I was like, it works. I felt like Thomas Edison. I was like, it actually works. You can take this information, you can, do a investigation of yourself, and then take that investigation and give it to this generative AI and actually get something that you can use that really, really, really sounds like you. So, and that's the voice print. And I'm so happy it works.
Well, I'll talk to you later about what we can actually share with our audience because I'd love to see the style guide and the stories too, because I think those are just, it's interesting to see the training process of AI and to understand how you can make this, tool work for you and become in many ways an extension of your voice and provide that first draft if that was the article or the story you were looking to tell. I'm interested for the sake of our audience in just understanding like how does this work for a CEO or business leader? Is there a version of this that is self-guided or is this something where they really need a Sherpa? A prompt Sherpa, I guess, to ask them the questions, follow up in the right way, make sure you're driving home these points. I guess that would be the question. Is this like a fully automated communications assistant or is it a communications manager's assistant? Does that make sense?
Yes. I think if you have like the relationship with Ari and I is like we're writing partners, right? So, if you have a writing partner, a human who understands your communication style, who has gone through the voice print from the audience's point of view and understands where your stuff lands and where it doesn't land. And if they can be, I don't like that phrase brutally honest because, it sounds ridiculous. If they can be clear about where you might be misguided, right? And check those things, then you've got a chance of putting it into the system in a way that is much more efficient, right? So if Ari sent me like Ari's newsletter once a month comes to me as a Voxer, 11 minutes of Ari talking about something, right? So while 11 minutes might seem like, oh my God, that seems like that's going to take forever, blah, blah, blah. I know that some of the things that Ari says are him processing it for his own sake, his own sake. He's just saying it out loud to say it out. It's not necessarily intended to be instructive. It's just getting it out of his head. So not all of those 11 minutes are instructive, helpful information for his audience. Sometimes he's just trying to find his way out of the woods. So I need to be able to say, I know that about that, and he knows that about him. So it's not like, oh my God, you touched my 11-minute Voxer and chat. Of course I did. because there was things he was working out, and you can hear it in his voice that he's trying to work it out, but he always finds his way out of the woods, right? So if you have a person in your life who understands that about how you create or how you work things out, then what you send to ChatGPT will be much more along the lines of how not only how we sound, but how we really want to sound, right? Because it
Hmm.
should be aspirational as well. It
Hmm.
shouldn't just be somebody, meandering. Does that make sense? Does that?
100%. And
Okay.
I think that what we're both writers, so I think when you told me about the voice print, I thought, that actually sounds super interesting. And I think what was maybe most interesting to me is that it was somewhat similar to my own marketing discovery interview. When you go in to find out the details of a brand, you also have to find out the why, how, what, who, the product features, the why us, the why now, all those different things that, are sort of endemic to a brand narrative may also have a certain similarity to the personal narrative of the people. And it's interesting when I do, when I'm training somebody now, I will send them a copy of our brand narrative, the Google Doc, and I'll say, put that into a thread on ChatGPT as a starting point. And then whatever the players are, put their bios in, but better yet, put their voice prints in. Until you have, sort of, something where this thing is now ready to actually give you data. I think the people who go, I didn't get anything out of ChatGPT. Well, you didn't put in the right, prompts. You didn't start with the right stuff, and you really do have to start with the building blocks of story. Tell me how you could sort of see this kind of brand narrative, personal narrative, sort of working in tandem.
So it's such a great point that you talk about, when people say, like, I didn't get anything out of it. It's like, it's not, that's magical thinking. That's
Hmm.
very, uh, it's lazy to think that there's a magical gremlin
Hmm.
in your laptop that's going to make you a star. It doesn't work like that. There's effort that goes into it. And a lot of the ways that especially in Ari's methodology is like there's the icky part in the beginning, the optimized part, right? Optimize, automate, outsource. There's the gross part in the beginning where you have to like look at where you are. Like, what do you do? Who are you? Right. And that
Hmm.
takes time, and it's uncomfortable, and it's not like head down grinding. It's much more introspective. So it really is a slow building but the value is tremendous if you take the time in the beginning. So I think if like, okay, here's a great example, because this was the second thing I did before speaking with you today. Was I'm really interested in this author, Octavia Butler, who wrote a book called Parable of the Sower, which was the book for my Get Woke Catskills book club. So, I don't need to say anything more about that. So, what had happened, because the book is so interesting in its uh, thematic sort of qualities, and the storytelling is fat, but was that it started a whole sort of school of thought called emergent strategy, which is more of a strategy for social justice and community activism, right? How to do that effectively in this day and age. But I kept thinking it sounds like it could translate very well into a value driven business, right? If you were heart centered and you didn't want to destroy the earth and you wanted to do good things and blah blah blah, that this would be a great way to establish a business. So I asked ChatGPT if it was familiar with the book, and of course it said it was. And I asked it for the key themes for the strategy, which are interconnection and fractal patterns, like what's the name of Fibonacci, right? Like everything has a pattern, right, in
Hmm.
nature. Um, adaptation and resilience, collaboration and decentralized leadership, imagination and creativity, and healing and self-care. Those are the major themes, right? So I said, well, thank you very much. Are there examples of this strategy being implemented in a business setting? And it said, yes, there are. And then it gives me agile methodology, holacracy and self-organization, open innovation, design thinking. And then I said, well, it sounds weird because it's kind of like what you and I are doing right now, meaning ChatGPT and me. Maybe I'm onto something. So ChatGPT says, indeed, there is a parallel to be drawn between our conversation and the principles of emergent strategy. As we engage in this dialogue, we are adapting, collaborating, and co-creating knowledge in real time. We are embracing the uncertainty and complexity of the conversation, allowing ideas to emerge and evolve through our interaction. By exploring ideas and collaborating in this dynamic manner, we are participating in a process that mirrors the emergence of new possibilities, just as emergent strategy seeks to unlock innovative and transformative potential in various contexts. Isn't that cool? So
Totally.
we took this journey, this my writing partner ChatGPT and that I I was inspired by the conversation. AI was not inspired. I was inspired to draw the parallel between emergent strategy and the actual conversation I was having with AI. AI didn't say, Amy, it's exactly what we're doing right now. I said, it sounds weird. Don't you think? Isn't there a parallel between this? And then it agrees with, yes, there is a parallel. And then gives me supporting information that shows me that that my inspiration was on target, right? And there is nothing that makes me happier than being right. I mean, people used to say, like, do you want to be right? In the club I've belonged to for a very long time, it says, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? And I said, but it makes me so happy to be right. I can't choose. So
Yeah.
my
Well,
thing.
you're kind of describing one of the tenets of improv comedy. Yes, and right. You never sort of reject an offer, and that's how you're able to like create something out of thin air. ChatGPT can't be counted on to like fact check you to make sure you've got all your details right. You actually have to do that on your own, but it will be, if you keep feeding it and moving it in the right direction, it will take you really to interesting places. I actually was doing some work on today's set of interviews, and I wrote something in and it gave me something back, and I went, huh, that is actually like better than I would have done it. And
But isn't that that notion of being open-minded, right? That, you're being open-minded. And once you're
mhm,
open-minded, anything is possible, right? Because then you're not shutting down. You're going, I never thought of it like that. Thank you. Moving on. It's a support. It feels oddly supportive because but you have to be a curious person. You, that, you know,
you
that's
have to
the
follow
price of
up.
admission.
You have to
Yeah.
follow up. Yeah, I
You
mean, if
have
you
to
just sort
follow
of,
up.
yeah, you can't leave it,
Yeah.
take the first draft. You got to put the irreverence back in there.
Right. Exactly.
So Joe and I, when we were talking, and we're doing a series on AI for content, and obviously generative AI is a big part of that. I started talking to him about this concept of a personal storytelling assistant, a PSA. And he said, well, that needs a name. And so he proposed Judy, and I said, okay, well, I'll back into some kind of acronym. I accepted it on the spot. So I'm just floating this by you. I don't know where this may ultimately arrive, but I like the idea of, okay, I create this super assistant, right? I feed in my brand narrative, I feed in the voice print for me. I might even feed in, hey, and you should also understand, my chief operating officer's voice print. You should also understand my marketing person's voice print or whatever. Or maybe those in Joe's realm also can actually just be avatars. And if you're a solopreneur, maybe you have Rosie in marketing and whoever the case may be. Maybe that's why he thought we needed a name, an actual, we need to anthropomorphize it. So I did do some reverse engineering of that acronym. Not sure yet if we're there. Might have to open it up to comments on Mighty Networks. I got journey, understanding, deliberate, yield. And I can tell by your expression, you're like, not convinced by that one. But think of this as a guided journey or a process or a story, right? A journey is a story, right? It's a narrative, and you're fueled
Right.
by a deliberate desire or intention. And I think that sort of lines up a little bit with the Joseph Campbell school of thought. Our life narrative is about self-improvement. It's about, kind of achieving goals and the active pursuit of those goals. So we'll work with the acronym maybe a little bit. We'll do a little more workshopping on that. But
Yeah, you mentioned Joseph Campbell, and I would say I just wrote it on my desk in pencil. That's how technical I am. Think about hero, right? Because hero's journey, that's his big thing. So, hero, it starts with H. It's help. It's just help, right? And E, there's a million things you can come up with. My ring light is. You can come up with a million things for E, and then R is it's realistic. It's reality. And then the O is open-mindedness. If you're open-minded about it, or openness, or so think about the word hero. That was one I was thinking, and the other one, which appeals to my existential side, is Bartleby, like Bartleby the Scrivener.
That's gonna be a hard one to do. That's a long acronym.
I know, but you wouldn't have to have it be an acronym. It would just
right.
be
No,
the name, like Bartleby the Scrivener. And then it's sort of like, oh, you don't know who Bartleby is? You never read
But
Bartleby
he's
the
not a
Scrivener?
yes and kind of character.
No, he isn't. That's why I like it, because I would prefer not to. I would prefer not to. Right. So it's sort of the anti-Bartleby.
Yes. Fair enough.
So anyway, think about hero. Because
All right. I like both of
one.
those for sure. And do you think, is there a version of what, I think we're going to keep talking through voice print, keep talking through Judy/hero/Bartleby, whatever it may be. But because I do think that's something that we could actually do really well, because I think we do have sort of a creative core within this particular crew. But is there a version of Judy? Let's call it Hero. Is there a version of Hero for a solopreneur where we can create something that would be ultimately self-guided, or is it something where they need to come and sit by your virtual campfire and kind of get that sense?
I mean, there's always going to be levels of engagement for people. There are people who don't want to open up to another person. There are people who are totally like me, like my dishwasher's broken. I'm not calling anyone. I'm watching 27 YouTube videos. I'm going to find the one with the worst production quality, because that'll be the person who knows what they're doing, and I'll follow that, right? I will not, I would be on fire before I ask for help, right? So there are people like me who don't want that. And you could, with Hero, you could completely do it by following a really simple thing, which is to basically record yourself telling a story. And when I do this method, I do it for high school seniors up here in the Catskills when they're writing their personal essays to get into college, because they are taught in school how to write academically, but they are not taught how to write a personal essay. They have no idea. And talk about people who are not in touch with themselves. Teenagers are the greatest group when it comes to that, right? Who they want to be has very little to do with who they actually are. So when I do workshops with them, the first thing we do is I say, do you have any scars? Everyone has one, right? And they are so facile when it comes to talking about their scars. Show me where it is. What happened? Oh, we were building the deck and I fell through the thing and my dad was, and they can tell you the greatest story about that scar because it's a part of them, right? So after that, then they understand that they can tell a story, right? And once they have that confidence, it's not so hard to take the leap into talking about, take a moment in time that changed you. Take a moment in time that still sticks with you. Don't tell me things. Tell me one thing. Tell me one thing. And the second they can tell you one thing, everything about them comes from that. It's like a flower that blooms, right? Like, somebody who got a scar because they were pulling a calf out of its, mom on February night and they fell backwards and bashed their arm on the thing. I want to know that story. I don't want to know that their family's been dairy farming for 4 generations. I don't give a shit about that. I want to know about the night. I want to know about the night.
Well, Grandpa's story could be interesting. I mean,
Right, but
maybe.
Grandpa's not trying to go to college.
Okay, fair enough.
Right?
Good point.
So I want to know about that because that tells me everything I need to know about this kid's work ethic.
Well,
right?
this is a very interesting thought that just popped into my head, or it's interesting to me at least. There's almost a democratization of this type of capability, this type of art, where I think like communications, so somebody has to have the money to pay, somebody like you to help shape and mold their children's entrance, essays, whatever the case may be. But at some point, and I guess the question, like for me, I think there will be a version of Hero, the self-guided version of Hero, that would be more available for everybody. And we're using Hero at this point. Maybe we'll actually
See, look how it just flows, man. It's just become.
it does,
It's
doesn't
now.
it? Right?
Just
It's
right
suddenly
there now. Yeah.
it's there. But then there's the version where you've got a driver, like somebody who can actually interpret that content. And that's really why I think if you were asking me, well, should I just take Amy's questions and put them into ChatGPT myself and write my own thing, or should I go through Amy and have her do it for me? I would say invariably go through Amy. Have her do it for you, because there's a certain level of expertise at each one of these various stops along the way in this. And if you want to get somebody who's going to get great stuff out of Midjourney you should get a graphic designer familiar with that. And,
Yes.
all
Because
these
there's
things.
a language. Because there's a language that I have, right? That people who haven't done this for 45 years or however long I've been writing don't have that language, right? It's like graphic design. There's people who will be able to go, I like this. It's pretty. Why? Pretty is a very woolly word. It doesn't mean anything. So they need to be able to describe it in a much more robust way, whether that's a visual or whether that's the written word, right? So I think, yes, I think the people who are resistant to it are the people who need guidance. I think the people who are like, no, they don't need the help. They all they need is the roadmap. Although nobody knows what a roadmap is anymore. Did you know that?
Not since the internet of GPS. No, I can't find my way home.
I say that to kids and they're like, "What's a roadmap?" I was like, "Oh my god, oh my god." Anyway,
You ever heard of Rand McNally? No.
yeah, no.
Well, Amy, this has been super fun, and we should get back together and keep noodling this idea around until Hero becomes, something more tangible. Right now, I think if somebody wants to put it to good use, they should give you a call. basically right now, because I think you've got a certain skill set as a prompter, as a kind of, if you want your essential voice print done, that's I think a great skill set, and I think something that everybody probably needs more and more of in this marketplace.
Absolutely, because if they have to put disclaimers on things now that say that this is human generated, that's a bad sign. You know, if your writing isn't, if it's not crystal clear that you're a human being when you're writing, that there needs to be a disclaimer, then you probably sound like a lot of you know, it's almost like distinguishing your product in a noisy marketplace, right? Like,
Oh yeah, there's and you can. I've gotten to the point now. I'm like, that's AI. That's AI. Okay, that's real. You know.
right,
And
right,
I'm just like, you kind of start. It's almost like when they had the big display ads, and you would get to the point where you could just block them out. You just would look at a web page, and you didn't even realize that you had just like jumped over another ad, another ad, another ad, another ad. I think that's
right.
the thing is like, if the folks who are going to rely increasingly on just pure AI without actually interpreting it through a human lens, I do think people are going to get wise to that.
Yeah, that's the dehumanizing. And you know, it's so funny because it's like, oh, it's dehumanizing. It's like, right, but you're in charge of that dehumanization as a human. Like you're doing that.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? You're making it dehumanized human
Yeah, I
by,
guess the
you know, throwing, just blanketing the universe with crap that has no humanity, you know?
I guess the question is like how, you know, if you use it to take that 4 hours and turn it into 20 minutes,
Right,
time saver, the output is still yours. It is still uniquely Amy Randall, but you did it in whatever 20% of the time.
right.
Is that fair game? You know, like where do we draw this line? I guess
But
that's the
like,
question.
so I'm a contributing essayist to the Christian Science Monitor, which is like you know, I can't swear, you know, there's like all kinds of things that are not me as a
Hmm.
writer, but I love writing for them and my editor is fantastic, right? And if I want to write about T-ball, ideas will swirl around my head for 2 months and I won't write a damn thing. But if I have a good, solid first draft in front of me, now I have the, you know, the desire, the motivation to go in and go like, yeah, no, that was it. That's it. I can nail that. Blah, blah, blah. And I have absolutely no problem sending in that to Owen as my work because it is my work. Because
Hmm.
I didn't just give him I didn't just send the first draft and go like, isn't this adorable? It's not me. It's not what he's expecting. He's expecting something from me. So
Hmm.
I don't, I maybe I should have some kind of moral dilemma with that, but there's so many other things to have moral dilemmas about. I really don't have time for that. Let's pick something bigger.
Well, on that note, I think that's a good closer right there. All right, Amy, I look forward to continuing this
All
conversation
right, man.
and
That
fleshing
was
out
super
here.
fun. Super
Yeah.
fun. All
All
right.
right. Until next time.
Until next time, go Cubs. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
know, well,
No,
that's
your
the team.
Cubs. Go your
My
Cubs.
Cubs,
Yes.
my Cubs, my Cubs.
Sorry, I'm a
Okay.
New Yorker. I mean, you said
No, no,
I
it's,
just.
oh, are
Yeah.
you a
Okay.
Yankee fan?
Sorry. Yeah. I didn't. I didn't.
Oh
Sorry.
dear.
I didn't.
Do you know?
I was gonna
Okay,
interject
before
when you
you
said the
leave,
Mets.
I just have to tell you one quick story. So we're a National League team. My father bled for the Brooklyn Dodgers his entire life,
Yeah.
and he hated the Yankees with a passion that was scarcely human. And I was dating this guy when I first moved to the city, and I totally loved him. And he wanted to take me to a Yankee game, and I was like, I can't go to Yankee Stadium. He's like, what? I said, you know, we're National League family. I can't go. So I called my dad and I was like, Dad, I really like him. And he's got really good seats. Can't please let me go. He said, I will allow you to go if you spit on that place as you enter the gates. And I was like, okay. So I spit on Yankee Stadium.
Okay. Well,
he, real,
that is
he
definitely a
really
good
wanted
closer.
boys. He really wanted
Yes.
boys, and he got 3 girls. So what can
All
you do?
right. Fair enough.
All right.
Thank you
See
for
ya.
that. Bye.
Bye.